I think traditional advertising like we know it is done. And why I say that, it's a big statement, but I think if we look at consumer behavior, we just need to reflect on ourselves, and you can see one's own media journey. I mean, not many people are watching TV as they used to. Are you listening to radio? It obviously depends if you're in the car, which would be more in which market. But print, for example, has also become a bit redundant. So I often say, print has lost its primary function, and that was to deliver news. If you buy print, it's become art now, more of a function, much like the evolution of the candle. The candle's primary function used to be to provide light. Along came electricity. It lost its function, but the value of a candle at a dinner table, priceless.
Davin Phillips is a seasoned brand and new media specialist renowned for his innovative strategies and deep understanding of African markets. As a director at CSA.global, an award-winning agency specializing in brands, technology, and experiences, co-founded by his late mother in 2000. Davin has spearheaded campaigns across 87 plus markets. Celebrated as a pioneer in the brand and talent space, join us as we go inside the dynamic world of bridging brands and culture. Where I'd love to start is if we're at like some sort of dinner party, some sort of professional setting, and someone asks you what you do for a living. How do you best articulate that?
I often just say I'm in media and entertainment, to be honest with you, just because the journey and what we do is so diverse.
Yes.
And I think also when one's kind of, specifically when you're honing in on Africa, you have to wear many hats.
Yes.
So I often will go, media and entertainment, or, just a storyteller, or another kind of superpower is being able to commercialize creativity. And that's was a big part in the journey.
Amazing. And tell me, if we're watching like a Netflix documentary on your life or reading your autobiography, where does your story begin?
I think it begins, I guess, when one comes conscious of yourself, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a full journey of life. But I would say where it begins, I mean, I think the idealization, or one always had an idea of what you would be or what life would be. I remember, setting targets in my teenagers at like 25, I'll be there, at 30, I'll be there, at 35, I'll be there, and then you kind of just realize sometimes just to go with it. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely say 19 was a good year for me. I think that was a year where I kind of felt my toes moving in my shoes, and I kind of put my shoes on of independence.
Where did you grow up here in Cape Town?
I grew up in Johannesburg. Grew up in Joburg, moved to London, did the whole gap year, loved it, except the weather. I ended up getting involved in property, like an estate agent. So it was a great thing to do as a gap year. And then I just couldn't do the weather, to be honest with you. Growing up in the Southern Hemisphere, I needed to see the sun. The family relocated to Cape Town. I think I gave my notice like literally the next morning, and I was moved down here. It's been about 21 years.
And your folks, like, maybe just paint a little bit of your early context. Tell me a bit about your
family.
I mean,
I'm very blessed. I have some amazing parents and guardians. My late mom was one of the founders of the agency. Was an amazing being, conscious being. I mean, she pretty much conceptualized Mr. South Africa in its day, and was purely as a marketing agenda to get men to start participating in grooming and taking care of themselves.
Wow.
Because in that era, you had big muscle building, and then she did a lot at the time, particularly when Mr. Matheba came in office. We used to bring out a lot of A-list celebrities to South Africa for Miss World, etc.
Incredible.
So upbringing was definitely very unique. Often either on a film set or dealing with this talent, just kind of brought up in the world of entertainment.
Amazing. So it's in your blood, like.
Totally. And then, amazing. I mean, I've a guardian and a dad. I'm blessed to have two fathers. One was one more about, here's a book, and, I think at 16 in the first book he gave me was Celestial Prophecy. At 18 was Alchemist.
Incredible.
And then my biological dad taught me more about being a man, like in the sense of, assertiveness.
Being a stand-up guy. I love that. And so did you study after school?
Yeah, so funny enough, I studied law. And funny story. I guess I wrote my exam, and I actually said to my parents at the time, I said, you know what, I did the first year BA, a master, BA master, it was a BA law, mastered in English and philosophy.
Yeah.
Wrote the exam, and I actually said to my parents, you know what, you want to be the lawyer, I don't want to be the lawyer. No disrespect, I appreciate the opportunity, but I really love the industry that you guys are in, and of which my mother was very much of a traditionist, so like, of which basically started out in the mailroom equivalent, to be honest with you, and just kind of working, learning. Obviously didn't go down too well, but where I respect them is I still don't know if I actually passed that exam or not. So they at least gave me the space to kind of discover myself.
Incredible. So then tell me, do you finish studying and go, okay, I'm starting a business? What's the sort of first step that happens into you stepping into this industry, like officially?
So, I mean, I started off, and it's ironic, I say I didn't want to be a lawyer, but if I were to, the amount of hours I spend on legal and contracts and dealing with legal teams,
it's great
for the variety of the products or IP development. So it's kind of my karma caught up with me, I guess, but at least it saved the foundation. I mean, I started off, as I say, I mean, the family was in the industry. One thing that always used to inspire me was my late mom was very much a PR media figure. And I used to love that she'd pick up the phone and I should speak to the media and for an editor from this publication or this radio or this TV, and how everyone kind of knew her. And I remember actually once in the back of the car watching, and I said, gosh, I hope I can achieve this one, like when I started in the career. And I was lucky enough where, I would say at about 24, 25, I was able to kind of develop a name for myself, particularly in the media, starting off in a very much a traditional PR lens.
Yes.
We were doing a lot for beauty, just tourism, travel. We had some TV shows, and we also used to have a TV show called Castle Loud.
Yes, I remember Castle Loud.
Yeah, it was an interesting property. Basically, it was Castle at the time were trying to reposition in the merit of going after more local kind of coolness or local relevance.
Yes.
And we had the idea, Mark, my stepdad, had the idea of, why don't we create our own music show where we would only focus on South African music. And the funny thing is, believe it or not, because at that time radio wasn't playing South African music. It was far and few.
Absolutely. So
they actually purchased airtime to even do the South African top 10. They went and put jukeboxes in bars that only played South African music. Wow. And Unati was actually discovered on the show as well. So it was an amazing platform that kind of came through. And that was very much as I was kind of entering into the career, where it was great.
Amazing. So you were working at the company.
Yeah, man.
And it was CSA at that time.
Yeah. CSA, so the board's we're a family business. The mom, dad started, but it was very much a much smaller outlet.
Yes.
They never wanted to build it in a capacity where, they wanted to work on projects they wanted to work on, and they created a great lifestyle. The second generation, we came in, and we obviously have grown it substantially. When I joined, I came a director about 7.5 years after being in the business, about 27. And then I was responsible for taking it aggressively into Africa. And geez, when I say Africa, I mean we've been blessed. We've done a lot in Nigeria. We do a lot in Nigeria, Ghana, Angola, Ivory Coast, Zambia, Congo, Ethiopia, Mozambique.
Crazy, man.
And being in the market and having teams in those markets. Jeez, not just theory, working with some amazing creative minds.
Okay, so when you take over, so when you sit down and go, I want to tackle Africa, like what is that? What does that strategy look like? Are you going, okay, I need to find the right talent? How do you find properties, brands? Like how do you?
Look, Africa is very different to other markets. It's been a journey. It's definitely not something that's happened overnight.
Yes.
When we started aggressively into Africa, so we basically won a pitch with Diageo, and it was for their reserve portfolio, which was their luxury portfolio. And they were looking for a PR team to help basically construct and deliver on earned media. And Diageo being a listed company, there was concern obviously also with brown envelopes or maybe bribing. So it was an amazing kind of project where we basically went in and we assisted the agencies on record. And you can imagine a company like Diageo, it's been on the continent for some time. They're working with a lot of in-market agencies, some of the leaders. So we had to come on board and build capabilities purely on how to construct a story that is going to actually get exposure in tier one media, like newsrooms, etc., and the construct of it. And it was amazing. So basically through that, then they asked us to actually get more involved, where we became 50% accountable. And it was a great opportunity because it allowed me to kind of see where PR was on the continent and where storytelling is in the capacity of like earned media and editorial campaigns, which was great. And then through that, then they asked us then to launch Ciroc vodka into Africa. And that was very much with our world, because we've done a lot with talent and understanding and developing talent. We were asked to kind of launch it, but we weren't allowed to use Diddy. Now, this is obviously about 10, 11 years ago, so before the controversy. But it was mainly because Diddy was, he does innovation or did innovation, and it was more North American focused. So we had to launch an unknown brand, and they wanted to premiumize it and go after kind of localizing it. And it was a massive success. We basically went from 1% to 47% market share in the premium vodka category in 16 months, purely below the line. And what we did is we behaved either like a record label or film studio, and we went to some iconic names, and we basically just kind of supported them. So in like Nigeria, you had D'banj and Banky W.
Yes.
In South Africa, we had Bonang, Dimples, Deleuze, David Klale, DJ Movado in Angola. And it was amazing. And just being on that journey, to be honest, I think which definitely kind of sparked purpose was there was a track, Uhuru, which DJ Movado actually produced and did. And I heard the song on radio play. I mean, when I was in the taxi, when I was doing on-trade visits at bars and clubs in market, it was huge. Yeah. And I said to Claudio, you've done really well. And he goes, yeah, it's been great, but I didn't make $1. And it just stuck with me. And I just kind of realized, the problem in the industry, particularly on the continent, and it's not as mature as other markets, is a lot of the time it's friends and family that are managing talent. And we need to get to a space where talent are able to make money while they sleep, or that their rights and music is being commercialized correctly. And realizing there's enough lawyers, doctors, and I think what really helps develop communities is sensibility, and that's rooted to storytelling and through the craft and arts, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So that really that's when it sparked. We were like, okay, wait, I think we need to open up a talent division.
Okay.
But it took some time. And then unfortunately, when Fran, my late mother, passed away, my brothers and I, we sat and said, okay, let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's open up the talent division. And then that's when we had certain names join us, and we were able to, it was amazing to witness seeing some individuals basically make more than they made in 1 month in a whole year, and slowly built it up.
I remember seeing your roster, man. I remember seeing Bonang on it, if I'm not mistaken. I remember seeing D'banj on it, and I was just like, wow, this feels like the equivalent of the sort of big, sort of monstrosity agencies, the WME, CAAs, and it felt like the birth of the African, like, I don't want to say only version of it, because it felt like you guys were doing many global plays. You know what I mean? I remember that's the first time I would say I came across it, and I was just like, yo, these guys are serious. And I looked into it, I found you, and I was like, okay, these guys are onto something. Tell me, and then so before that happens, what was the sort of big driver in the business? Was it the PR side? Like, what was bringing in most of the revenue without sort of numbers? What was was it the eventing side or brand?
So we're doing the brand comp side, and then we're doing eventing. Okay. But large scale eventing productions. Yes. So you might have the fan walk that was actually created in Cape Town. My brother Brandon pretty much created that, and it was purely around the World Cup. We also did the FIFA draw for the city of Cape Town. And then we activated the fan walk for the World Cup in 2010. Wow. And it was, how do you keep tens of thousands of people entertained, but at the same time, if a disaster happens, how do you disperse them? So it was a bit of engineering, but that wasn't my brainchild. It was my business partner, Brandon. And we used to do a lot. I mean, we did a lot for the festive lights, which is the Christmas lights. I think when we first won that, it was 45,000, and the biggest we took it up to was about 120,000 people.
Jeez.
I mean, and then we would end up doing productions for the President's Day. When Thabo Mbeki was there, for example, we had 2 events. It was about 300,000. So we went a lot into productions and eventing. And then what we actually decided is when we opened up the Los Angeles office, Brandon actually moved there with Mark and Fran. And I focused more on the comms and the talent side of things. Still doing the eventing and scale, but I was just drawn more to the comms side of that.
Crazy.
So,
and who else is, so your brother's in the business?
It's a Casa Nostra. Once you get in, anyone who joins should be wearing the spaghetti vest underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
So the board is my brothers and I. So Brandon, Jaron, myself, and then there's Mark. We're CSA Partners. And I'm very lucky, man. I have an amazing team who really is an extension and has become family.
Incredible.
I think now my mission statement is really just to, as I often say to my team, my goal is to become redundant to my team, where they come a lot better than me, and where they honor me is that my discernment is really just base level, and they innovate it and improve it. And I think that for me is success. So we'll see if we get there, but we're pretty close to that.
I love that. Bro, I just want to touch on, when I was doing a bit of research on you, I came across there was obviously quite a bit of back and forth between yourself and Bonang. I believe she was also on the roster at some point. What happened there? Is that all been sorted? Is that all behind you guys? And
it's the industry. It's the nature of the industry. What we did when Bonang joined us, she approached us. It was an opportunity where there was a specific story. She was very relevant, particularly just in South Africa. Our reach at the time, of course, we did a lot on the continent and international. And the vision was to make her continental and international. And it was an amazing 4 years. We did a lot. Mainly when we took her into Nigeria. I think when she joined us, she must have been just short of 1 million collective followers. She went up to about 12. And the goal was just to really commercialize and really drive. And we had a huge media machine around her. And then we obviously pivoted and we created products around her. Mm-hmm. And it was great. It's unfortunately what happened. We've settled. I wish her well. We did launch a fantastic brand, obviously with our experience working with a lot of alcohol brands. It was a huge success. But as I say, I wish her well. It's the nature of the game. And sometimes you wish for something and paths change, obviously.
Got you. Okay, so it's all behind you guys and it's all been done.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess, my experience was I used to do a lot for the brands, and the reality in this industry, you work a lot with brands, and every 3-4 years, a pitch can come up and you got to repitch for the work or the market share you've created. Yes. And I wanted to really kind of create our own brands. And it was a good testament. It was a huge success. When we launched House of B&G, we became the highest followed alcohol brand in Africa. We had zero advertising. And it was a pure, simple idea where basically we wanted to create an MCC. Where locally, of course, it's all about, aspiration and badging in certain retrospects. Yes. And the price point was obviously quite high. $3.99 for an MCC at the time was, people thought we're smoking our socks. And then I remember we did it exclusive with Woolworths. And we sold out with the allocation on the first literally 3 hours. In fact, we reached over 1 billion impressions. It's an amazing team on it, just in terms of the press and the media. And then we expanded that. And then basically the idea was it's something I just saw in the US with the Big Fat Jew. He has the white girl rosé.
Yes.
And he has the RTD with the can. So the idea was always to bring out the can. It was a huge success, massive success. And then we had a big offer on the table, and then unfortunately things got a bit pear-shaped, and at that time for me, it was always about building something, but I'd lost the passion, to be honest with you, with it, and just kind of moved on.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad, man. You guys were really, your time together was it was crazy to see. It was one of the sort of biggest brands working with one of the best teams, and it was just everything looked like it was happening.
Yeah, it was great.
Sad, but that happens, right? It happens, and
it's again, I've looked back, and again, as I say, I wish her well. We did some amazing work together.
Yes.
That time when she was with, and when we were kind of spearheading, she got a lot of international awards. We did some documentaries, and it was an idea of just having cameras on us while we're traveling, and then we thought, okay, let's do that. We came up with the special and etc. And it was great. But when you look back in it, it was interesting. Before COVID, I was directly managing maybe about 5-6 big names, and we had a huge waiting list. I think I was doing about 96 flights a year, to be honest with you. And you have this idea of where you're going. But if I look back at it now, I mean, I think we've placed over 340 different artists with brands this year alone. Wow. And every year it's growing. So sometimes you just got to trust the process. Sometimes, with Instagram, it's all about instant gratification, but we look back and our model is simple. I mean, we are really trying to do the CAA/WPP. If they had a baby, that's CSA. And if we had endless funds, I would obviously fund the arts and develop talent. But I also realized that through the evolution of where media migration is going, and brands are actually needing to tap into the culture zeitgeist in order to be relevant, to stand out of cluster, like complete clutter in the messaging. It's an opportunity where we're able to bring brands into the culture, and we're able to bring talent into the brand's world, and it creates synergy where both stakeholders are lifted up, as it were.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I hope one day you guys can also just be cool. I mean, she's also like national treasure, and you guys are doing some incredible work. So chat to me about where is the business currently? How many employees? Like what's it?
I mean, it's an evolving equation. As any entrepreneur, you have moments of yes, and you have other moments of why the fuck am I doing this? Excuse my French, but it's been interesting. I mean, I think if I were to go on a timeline, I always wanted to. At 35, I set a target to myself that I'd be consulting in foreign markets, and I was fortunate enough, and I achieved it at 29. And we did a lot where we worked with global teams, developed strategies, assets, and toolkits. The biggest campaign was across 80 markets, which was interesting. It was great. It's like going to the coffee and people watching. You have different language and cultures and different diversity. But Africa has always been a big part of CSA and what we want to do. And we always wanted to kind of create a marketplace where the barrier of entry doesn't have to be so difficult. And that could be any creative. So whether it be someone in music or a producer or a songwriter or, a script writer or director or film, that barrier of entry doesn't have to be so hard, to be honest with you. And that's what I've always found is, it's been a little bit of a setback. So our mission and what we've been trying to do is to kind of build that network, which we've successfully done. And in all spheres, established to emerging to established. And more so in the last kind of 2-3 years, we've branched out into other markets, the French speaking, Portuguese speaking, where historically it's always been South Africa, Nigeria, and a bit of Kenya.
Yes.
And just realizing, I mean, if you see what's coming out of Congo, I mean, DRC is probably about 4 years behind where Nigeria was, but you got some artists that have a bigger YouTube subscription than Burna Boy, to be honest with you. And it's just that francophone and where it's going. So it's just amazing kind of creatives that are on the continent. So where the business is, we're very active on the continent.
Yes.
But at the same time, particularly this year, we've also expanded a little bit. So we're doing a little bit more in the UK.
Okay.
And just in the US, which we've been doing for a bit. But we've realized it's weird. It's just been an interesting journey. So we've specialized in developing artists, human brands, and then we've also worked with brands where we've helped grow their market shares. So it's been kind of an organic process, but then also through the development of influencer marketing, we've kind of realized there's certain nuances that we've kind of developed that we've made mistakes and kept us on check. Yes. So now we're very much focusing and we pivoted into very much more of a cultural and entertainment agency.
Okay.
And that's from the brand sides. We help brands where how to cast talent. So like if we're shooting a film, we go into the talent and we'll see, who's the right, because we're storytelling at the end of the day. What is the brand? What is the market segment they're going after? And then we look at the talent and we obviously know just in terms of what they stand for, what do they represent, what's the market or their media reach, what they stand for. And depending if it's tier 1, like a mega influencer, or should we say those who are influencing culture, to a tier 3. So we've kind of been building out a lot of these programs, culture and entertainment programs for a lot of brands.
So today, where what brings in the most money in the business? Would you say it's the brand side, the influencer side, is a mix of where is
Gosh,
what's bringing in the
I mean,
bread?
we've definitely focused more on the brands.
Okay.
I think where the talent side, I mean, realistically, if you're going to develop a talent, it's a 2.5 year burn where you're establishing,
longer,
investing.
yeah.
And if you're lucky, and it's most probably out of, you have 2 that will bring in, that will fund the other 8.
Yes.
So we do still do a lot, but I think, just for me, the setback of working with some people in the industry and just kind of relooking, we're in a very fortunate position where we're not just talent managers. We're proudly South African, but we're also global citizens.
Yes.
And have a vast experience, as I say, just in terms of creative strategy and developing and all of that. So we kind of realized this pivot a bit more and apply those resources and build out different team units. And that's what we've been really focused on, to be honest with you.
I love that. How do you guys know when to pivot? Like, are you picking up trends as you're traveling, or is it a gut feel? Is it a conversation with your partners? Like,
sometimes your intuition will never ever mislead you. If one's able to shut up and put the ego at bay and humble yourself to listen to your intuition, it's amazing what's revealed.
So true. Yeah.
And it's weird. It's just it's seeing and watching trends, but more so also just trusting as I say, your gut. So a lot of the time I pivot and I adapt. I mean, we got turned off working with brands. That's why we went so heavy with the talent. And we were like, we'd rather own a percentage of the asset, because that's really building wealth instead of just selling time, which is great in terms of being liquid, but it doesn't really build out an asset or wealth creation. So we went very deep into the talent space and we developed formats and IP and all that kind of space. But the reality of it is COVID came and we had tours and we had productions and everything came to a halt. And our partners and I, we made a commitment that we were not going to retrench anyone. It wasn't even on the radar. And we went back into the brand side. And it's weird, this time going back into the brand side, I must be honest, we've got some amazing brand partners. They've almost become an extension of the family, just the relationship and where it's come. And it makes you go harder, right? You become a bit more protective because you protect your family and you fight for your family. So where we've been lucky enough is some of the brand partners have challenged us also to think bigger, go bigger. You're not just a PR or, talent, so we're coming up with bigger creative formats. And it's been a great journey.
Amazing. I've got so many questions for you, man. Tell me, and how many staff you said at the moment?
So the core team is 25.
Okay.
I like that number.
Yes.
But then when we take on certain projects, it scales.
Of course.
It scales up to a variety.
Yes.
Our ambition is we never want to be an agency of 100 plus, to be honest with you. We like the human element.
Yes.
Obviously, of course, the next layer comes up as certain people going through the program. They also want to earn more and be more established. I'm sure there will be another layer that will be added, and most probably will go more than that. But we've gone more than that, and we bring it back. We go more than that, and it's a kind of good space. That's on the core team. In market, if I take our network and in market and projects, it is obviously is a lot more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are some of the brands that are your clients at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Funny enough, of late, we've been doing a lot in the alcohol space.
Yes.
I guess it's just the occasion. So AB and Bev.
Yes.
We do, for example, Corona, Stella Artois, Castle Double Malt Stout. We also did Smirnoff with them. And then recently, of course, we also worked with Diageo, where we developed their culture and entertainment program for Africa. And through that, it was with Johnny Walker, Gordon, Smirnoff.
Amazing.
For their brands, particularly in Africa. So, and I mean, we've worked with a lot of the guys. At the moment, what we're actually starting to do is we've launched a new product called CSA Partners, and it's a consultancy where we come in and we're having agencies almost white label, and even helping procurement teams.
Wow.
Because they don't know how to qualify. How do you know if a talent's overcharging you or undercharging you, and what's the investment that should be in place? Where a lot of the time, I guess through our experience, we know what's the market related price. And because we're doing it at scale, you can imagine after seeing over 300 different talent across the continent, you can more or less work out what they should be charging or not. Or more so, we have certain intrinsic, like if an artist is regional, for example, they will be playing at your local outlets, but then as their career expands, Then you look at intrinsics like, do they perform on national festivals? Have they done international festivals? What are their charts? What are their streaming numbers? Who they featured with in terms of a more established artist? Who's their circle of influence? What are the Google trends around them? So we look at a lot more deeper dive analysis around talent versus just their direct social reach. And as I said, I mean, we're fortunate. Our programs is we work with cultural influencers. So those who are influencing culture, and a lot of the time the byproduct is fame and social media of them. Yes. These are individuals that are focusing on their craft and they want to be the best in the craft, whether it be music, film, fashion, film, or etc.
How big is the roster, you said?
So we've moved away from management.
Okay, so that's already
we moved away from management, and I think it just was realizing just the management's tough.
Yes,
to really be honest with you, it's not easy. You basically a best friend, you're a coffee maker, you're a shrink, you do a lot, and you don't really get acknowledged. It's a selfless act, to be honest with you.
Very true.
Where what we preferred, and a lot of the time with us, I think because of what we do, and myself being a creative, we ended up also developing the narrative and the story with the talent. And where our attitude now is, okay, you're the talent, you have an idea, we'll look at it, we'll assess it, and then we'll see if we'll get involved, we will help you commercialize it or bring stakeholders in on that particular property. And then the other is on with brands, working with the brands where we develop a little bit more on the creative strategy or the comm strat, on how to integrate into culture and who to work with in that kind of space. It's definitely a little bit more interesting.
And you don't have any other assets you're building with talent? And
we do a lot.
You do a lot.
A lot. So
how do you structure something like that? Like, is it different with every talent? Is it an investment from you guys and the talent? Like, how do you, maybe you can just teach us about.
You juggle, you throw the ball up and you. No, I mean, we have another product. So we used to have, for example, the AKA app with Vodacom. So it's short format app content. We've just launched a new one now with Vodacom called The Culture. I'm very excited about that. So we basically, through our tech partner, Upstream, we galvanizing the audience of Vodacom, but we're giving unique exclusive content. And that is industry news, specifically from South Africa or the continent, or we're giving exclusive content in that world of that talent. So we launched with Young Stunner, who's a popular Amapiano. And then we're going to be launching new names every quarter. So it's basically will be a portal where you are able to get exclusive content. So that's on the short format.
Yes.
And then in long format, I mean, we've got a few shows which we're working. That comes out more out of the LA office, to be honest with you. And then with the talent and how do we do that? I mean, it really depends. At this time, it's also a little bit more, we choose and we select with what we feel like sometimes it's passion projects.
Yes.
And do we feel like, is that a narrator that needs to be out? And supportive, or storyboard that we like resonates with us and we feel it aids the sensibility and the storytelling.
Yes, I love that. So you're still working with talent, if I'm understanding correctly, but more on a idea per idea basis, and things that you guys are also drives you and things that you guys are excited about. And so you'll 100%. Work with talent and develop new ideas and develop assets that you build together.
100%. I mean, we're just not as reliant on it. But yes, we still do. I mean, as I say,
collaborative approach.
And I mean, look, it's still, the mission statement is to, develop the marketplace, but at the same time is commercializing the creativity.
Yes.
If you go across the continent and you look at particular talent, their revenue stream historically is either on performance or be a brand endorsement. So their streaming numbers, if I tap into music, it's not really what's bringing them home. It's not like, in the US, if you go get a few billion streams, you'll get $100,000.
Yes.
And also the record labels here behave a little bit different. They're not giving you $1 million to go to the studio and figure out a sound.
No, they're not. Yeah.
Where here artists are having to kind of create their own work. And then the record deals are more distribution deals per se. They're not as supportive. So we definitely, it's a mission statement where we want to help, and that's where the passion is. You know what I mean? Gotcha. So completely, still very much working with talent.
Where do you see like the future of the company? Where do you see, like, if we're sitting down having a conversation in like 5-10 years, where do you sort of envision it will be then?
I think doing what we're doing, just bigger and better.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, we're quite excited in tapping into the European market. I think it's an interesting narrative. I mean, we've been very obsessed with the African narrative and believe we need to focus on it. But it's also refreshing because I think sometimes what we've discovered through that journey is, fine, our sentiment is we're global citizens and we've done historically some global work. But it's interesting, sometimes I find the European execution is actually not as good as some of the work I've seen on the continent.
100% agree with you.
And I think that's us just being hard on ourselves, or we always aspire that, international is bigger and better. So what's really interesting and what's been really exciting in some of the projects that we're doing is just sharing our learnings and our case studies with some established outlets where they're like, oh, wow, we haven't looked at it like that. Or like, so it's kind of now... as a good friend of mine would say, ginger them, looking forward to ginger the international markets.
Okay, I like that. And let's chat brand, right? So how would you, as a strategist and someone who's got like deep knowledge in this, how would you approach, so if someone's listening and they've got their new brand that let's call it an alcohol brand or whatever it is that they're building and they're wanting to develop on the continent or in South Africa, what sort of high-level strategy would you give someone if you were doing some sort of a talk and there was an audience in front of you? What is some gems you would share with them and some strategies and some pointers? And
so I think particularly with Gen Zs becoming a little bit more bigger of the consumer market or global trends, I think a storyboard, you got to be offering something. People want to feel like they're part of something. So with the empty of why are you doing that? Is it just a margin? You're seeing an opportunity from a price point to create a competitor? I get it. But then if you're creating a brand that is a lifestyle brand or is an FMCG, you've got to pivot it to lifestyle. And what is the occasion that you're wanting to go after? So I think where it's at, a lot of it is occasional marketing. What is that moment when I want to consume it or be it? And then once you identify that, I would build the storytelling or the asset or the activation plans around that to recruit. A lot of the time, what we do with our plans is, so obviously we amplify. I always look at it like a digital highway. So we're a little town, and we obviously want to recruit people to come visit the town. But once they visit the town, we want them to buy real estate and stay in the town and eventually grow the population of the town. It's a simple analogy, but it's the same with brand building is you want people that it becomes part of their lifestyle. And obviously you can't it's a very broad statement. It depends on the industry. But if you look at telcos, for example, telecommunication companies, they've evolved from being telecommunications to now data companies. And now where they are, there's a huge race with more and more people coming online and smartphone development, where they are racing with content is what's actually becoming the new crude and what's recruiting people to their platforms. So it's a great place, in terms of being a creator or a storyteller, where they're looking for those unique opportunity that's going to really bring people to the platform.
I love that. What was that? FMCG? What is that? Sorry,
fast moving consumer goods. So it'll be like beer brands water brands or chips or anything that's your fast moving.
Okay, bro, that's super interesting. Any other trends you can think of? Like, what do you think's happening in the sort of marketing, because it's a big part of what you guys do is understanding that, like, what are some other trends that you see and you're picking up on?
I think traditional advertising like we know it is done. And why I say that, it's a big statement, but I think if we look at consumer behavior, we just need to reflect on ourselves, and you can see one's own media journey. Not many people are watching TV as they used to. Are you listening to radio? It obviously depends if you're in the car, which would be more in which market. But print, for example, has also become a bit redundant. So I often say, print has lost its primary function, and that was to deliver news. If you buy print, it's become art now, more of a function, much like the evolution of the candle. The candle's primary function used to be to provide light. Along came electricity. It lost its function, but the value of a candle at a dinner table, priceless. So it's really just in how and where you use it. So where I think where it's changing a lot, that model needs to be relooked, to be honest with you. And I think with the people are always on, so how do you stand out of this clutter? If you think of it, where it used to be 30-second adverts and now it's 6-second adverts. And, the algorithm of Meta is obviously designed in a way that they want us to keep switching, go to the next content. The more content we look at, obviously, the more impressions they sell. So I think where it's going is, I think brands need to pay a lot more attention to the culture zeitgeist. And much like telcos need to look for certain content to recruit to the audience. I think brands need to align in culture, and it can't be a capacity of doing a music, but I'm just doing it for a campaign and I'm showing up in 1 month. It's got to be okay if you're going after that particular culture. You've got to be consistent in it, and you've got to become a curator of it. So you can have an opinion and justify it. And how you curate it is you've got to know what's happening in it and participate in it. And that's where I see where it's evolving, because people, at the end of the day, they want to be entertained. You know, like we've got a lot to worry about. We've got to pick up kids, you've got bills, we've got to worry about what's happening next month. I mean, at the moment, we don't know what's happening in the US. You've got the Middle East crisis, markets ran down, we don't have load shedding anymore, but there's a lot of like social pressure. And I think when we have that me moment or we're connecting, we want to feel some form of social stimulation, you know. So that's where I think brands really are going to need to up the empathy meter. And I think brands that don't root it with empathy in terms of their marketing campaigns, where someone can resonate and see themselves in it, I don't think they're going to have the same impact as they used to.
How do you keep your ear on the ground? How do you stay relevant with?
Inquisitive. Never stop being inquisitive, to be honest with you. Never come comfortable. Comfort
Are you
is
seeing
dangerous.
stuff on Instagram? Are you?
Man, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a case of like ADHD, but it's just like it's just amazing. I'm passionate about it. You know, creativity fascinates me. Observation of consciousness fascinates me. So when I'm looking at a body of work or seeing something and seeing someone's perspective on that, it's just an interesting way. It's like makes you feel young. You know, keeps you hungry.
I love that. I love that. Do you read a lot?
You go through chapters times, you know, times where I read a lot, times where I write, times where, you know, my outlet is cooking.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, I do read, but I've been in the game for about 21 years, and obviously just in a lot of work which we do and just in comms and strategy, of course.
Yes.
You know.
What's one book you've read more than any other book?
I've never read a book twice.
Okay, amazing.
To be honest with you, there's definitely books that inspire that I might go back and I open. But when I read or when I take on a subject, it consumes me. And I have them on my shelf, and there's certain moments or there's certain books that connected with me. They're on there, and sometimes you can just tap into that when you just see the cover or that certain reminder, that affirmation. You know.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. That's epic, man. I think about
like I see you got the creative from Def Jam, fourth book, Below Virgil. That I'm on my next read.
Creative Act.
Yeah.
Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
That's really good. It's really good. I'll
It's on my next
book
read.
to any creative, any musicians especially. Please give that a listen. Give that a read, or audio. It's on audiobook as well. Give it a listen. That's something I've been doing. A lot of audiobooks, walking, not since my leg, but besides that, that's
it's
something
important.
I enjoy, man.
You got to feed the mind, you know.
You have to. Tell me, what does a day in your life look like? What
It varies.
Like? Is it?
I mean, I'll be honest. Sorry, it's getting a bit hot.
No.
I travel a lot.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be honest. I go back and forth. It really depends on the projects between Europe or into Africa. I am now in Cape Town, which is great for the next 2 months. So it's great to have a sense of routine. So waking up, smashing yoga. There's a great new yoga studio that's opened up. I'm really enjoying it. And then it's, jumping in different calls with the teams. And then I also like to create certain spaces where there's certain projects that still keep me stimulated, that I still carve out and work. So it varies, really varies, depends. And sometimes putting out fires and dealing with cut.
Of course. That has to be an everyday thing. And who are some creatives that you're really looking at right now and you very inspired by?
There's a few, but one who's really inspired me, Pharrell Williams. I just love his approach. For example, I wasn't really a Louis Vuitton guy, but I love how he brought and he changed the LV lover. And I was like, again, that's empathy, right? It's rooted in it. And more so his recent Lego film, which is basically his biography. I just love the style, and I think it was just so clever. Lego and their growth, and whoever came up with that idea. So it's pieces of me. and how he released his single, but it's basically his career, but doing it in Lego.
I love that.
And then they brought out this rocket, which he did, built it was amazing. But just the whole, the detail and how deep it goes into. So I love the mindset. He's definitely one that aspires you to be detailed orientated, which I've always believed in, but also just think beyond yourself, think more about how the body of work is connecting with your audience and how it makes them feel. You know what I mean? And that's tapping into that tapestry is definitely something.
I love that, man. I love the way you think, bro. I love the way you also articulate your ideas, man. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's as I say, I mean, just be vulnerable, and it's a journey, right? And you discover.
Bro, tell me, any advice you can give just because you also understand the sort of music landscape quite a lot, is there any advice you can give to any upcoming musicians from a branding standpoint? What are guys doing wrong? What could they be doing more? What strategies could they follow?
So, I mean, it depends which market. But the nice thing is, through the development of technology, for the first time, the barrier of entry is not so hard. So you're starting to see a lot of piano players. They're doing collaborations with international artists. They're doing international tours.
Yeah.
So I think what it really is, work on your sound, work on your craft, work on your story, what you want to tell, and what's your identity.
Yeah.
And it will get picked up, but you got to make sure in terms of which platforms you're putting it out. And an old saying, it takes, in Hollywood, it takes 10 years to get 5 minutes of fame. There's no such thing as instant gratification, to be honest with you, and particularly in the music industry, it's tough. A lot of the top guys will still be sleeping on couches, to be honest with you, but the music might be reaching. And I think it's really aligning yourself with the right people, to be honest with you. One, where you're protected. Two, where it can save you a lot of time is making sure how you're putting out your music. Where one, it's either, particularly when you're developing, you're putting out music, it's recruiting the audience. That's where people follow you. So you've got to be on your platforms, your YouTube, your Spotify, etc., all of them. But then I think it's also, don't just put out music, create a story around it. Make it a project, make it an exhibition of a body of work. And that can come down to the art cover, how you got into the art cover, behind the scenes of the art cover, the sound, how you bring it. So if you're dropping an album, don't just drop an album. What does each song say? You got the openings, middle, and the closing, like any film. Tell the story. I made a reference, for example, like for Williams with Lego, they went so deep into it for, released a new single with a music video, then they did a film. There's so many different mediums, which one needs to tap into in order to build that audience, because we're active in everything, right? In film, music, etc.
I love that. If you could send a press release out and it went to every single human on planet Earth, what would you write in that message?
Whew. Would it be a press release or would it be a statement?
Statement, 500 characters, whatever it is. What message would you like to get out?
I mean, not to sound too left side, but I'd literally say we won. Or your reflection, like I'm a reflection of you and you're a reflection of me. And the ultimate of it is we're but part of living a huge organism. And the idealization that we separate is just so stupid, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And I think where society is evolving, I think we're realizing is that the technology of consciousness and where it's going. So I think where it would be great is to try break down the barrier of like fear, and of individuals holding themselves back or self-belief. Be vulnerable, trust the process, and through vulnerability comes great strength. At least in my own story of self-discovery, that's where I've learned the most about myself, to be honest with you. So yeah, and just, I mean, it's an adventure, you know what I mean? One thing that's helped me cope, and it's been my story to myself, is, I've shared it with a few people, but to share it on a larger audience, time only exists in this dimension, so they say, and consciousness is governed by 5 senses in this space and time, right? So they say. No one knows what happens when we move on.
Yeah.
So I think we're in heaven and we have time to work on ourselves. So embrace it, you know what I mean? And another thing is, comfort or life, if it's a straight line, it needs its ups and downs, reflective of up and down is a heartbeat. Yeah. It means you're living up and down, your beats are going. if life is like that, it means you don't have a pulse. So embrace the highs, embrace the lows, embrace the highs, embrace the lows. Unfortunately, it's not a straight line.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And how do you deal with like self-doubt?
I don't. I've never doubt in my early years in terms of self-discovery and of learning who I am. I used to doubt myself, but I think once you know who you are, and also if you know what your intentions are. So it depends if you're operating from a space of I or a space of we. I aspire to a we because I believe that's bigger purpose. It's too easy to, to please yourself and just worry about the I. It's not as interesting.
Yeah,
it's more in kind of self-discovery. And I don't know. I mean, I've recently turned 40, and someone said it, and it stuck with me. You know, up to that, you kind of learning who you are, and then finally you kind of you know who you are. If you know what I mean, in that kind of space. Yeah,
I love that, brother. Anything from your side?
No, I mean we've covered. We've gone left, we've gone right, we've gone. A lot of that. I mean, I think it's creativity is a great outlet, but one has to be mindful of what your purpose is.
I love that. Thank you so much for making time.
Sure.
I really love this chat, man. I love the way you think. I love the way you see the world, bro. And I look forward to doing it again. And then
thank you. We
chat about
do
what you
check in 5 years, 100%. See if we've done bigger and better.
Amazing. I love it, bro. Thank you so much. Thanks for making
Thanks
time,
for having
brother. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks
that
for
was
having
beautiful,
me.
bro. Thank you. Giving such a different perspective to the show, man.